right, we are back. The one thing that I realized when I went live was that you have to turn off your notifications or you may never get through. And that's what happens when I guess you run a no budget program such as What is True. And you know what's neat about this is I've got to go back out and share with a bunch of people that hopefully have not shared it yet. One second, and we're going to move forward because change your anger, change your life. Before we start talking about the issue of depression, though, I have to acknowledge many things. Number one is the complexity of those things. And we have basically the four spheres of man, what comprises mankind. And if you look there, you find the same components with which we are to love the Lord our God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. Those are the ones. There we go. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength. So the components with which we are to love God are the components which can become distressed, emotionally distressed. The heart, the mind, the soul, the strength, the emotional sphere, the intellectual sphere, the spiritual sphere that I'm pointing to the heart, and it should be like this, and the physical constitution. So with that, those things in mind, let's go into here so that those that might be with us in the comments section on the What is True. This is coming from the What is True page. If you haven't, if you would go to the What is True Facebook page and follow it, like it, that way we can get the numbers up. We've got quite a bit of following on the Little Rock Church of Christ. But the What is True will come at you in a little different format, more of a teaching format, and can be interactive. If you choose to get on there and make a comment, we can entertain your comments. The complexity of emotional problems, though, cannot deny medical realities. So when a fellow that has been an advocate for individuals with disabilities that have diagnoses that require them to take medication for their condition that they were born with or the circumstance that has led them to this particular state. There are medicines. So we're not here to be antidepressant in the sense of a thing that a person can take. What we say is, if a person is sick, they get to a support group, like we would do if we were in a situation together, having gone through some tragedy together. So we get support. Then we have the need to see a physician if there's something that's wrong, obviously, in our ability to function. Then we have them evaluate. We're blessed with that. God has made many advancements in that. And then, you know, if a person is sick, then they ought to take an antibiotic. So the medical realities in regard to mental health, nobody here denies. And also the complexity. So when I start talking about this, and we spend a few hours in the discussion of depression, emotional distress, when we talk about it from a biblical perspective, because listen, emotionally, we are all, from the DNA, from the nature perspective, biologically, one person may be more susceptible than another. In other words, each one has actions and reactions to medicines or to even life's events. Experience. You're raised to suppress feelings. So the external stressors. You suppress feelings, and then of course, you know, then you have tragedy, loss, poor choices that go into that, and then oftentimes you either internalize and become severely depressed, introvert, or you lash out. You know, you lose control. And then we have bad decisions that we've made that bring us down, obviously. Guilt, anger, outlook. These are all things, friends, that affect everybody, and we all have to think about it in the terms that God would have us. So our mind controls our heart. I mean, our mind is our heart, but we have distinctions like the Bible makes. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So we understand what functions in the heart. But it's not just an intellectual control of the mind, it's a control of the emotion. And it's very emotional. And our emotions oftentimes drive our behavior, but we must allow the things we've learned, the truth, to guide us, to direct us in the next step. So what's happened if we are emotionally broke, if we're breaking down, and that is that we are now angry people. Thinking. Events or comments make us angry, depressed, or anxious. That's the first part. We begin to think that others are in control of who we are, what we are, how we feel. It is our interpretation, our thinking about those events. Not the event itself, but the thinking, how we interpret the event that controls the emotion we bring to the event. So this now, friends, becomes the next level. Emotion. And what I endearingly call in regard to anger. If you are sad, then you just have sad bitterness. Some people have mad bitterness. But anger, in the core of it, is where emotion, God's mercy, and me come to know each other. That way, those that are depressed, it's going to be hard to see, but the marvel of God's mercy is what holds the key to bringing you out. God's mercy, because God is now going to extend something to you that, well, you're not probably extending to yourself or to a person that may have offended you or done something against you. The emotions, the mental state brought about by the neurophysiological changes variously associated with the thoughts and the feelings and behaviors and responses. There's Wikipedia. A mental state of thoughts, feelings, behaviors, emotions. God's mercy in me, because we love him because he first loved us. So now we're coming into this place where Jesus teaches us how to overcome bitterness. He gives us the answer, and that enables you to win, rejoice, have mind control over the negative emotion. We usually think of emotion as, oh, well, that's the good thing, and it brought me this joy and this elation. Well, maybe it did to some, and then to you, it brought you something entirely different. And Jesus warns us to beware of bitterness. So bitterness is not just a conversation I have with myself about other people, but bitterness can defile me. It defiles my heart. That's why this discussion about depression, becoming cynical, or if you are struggling to bring your mind to that condition of love that believes, that hopes, that endures, that makes it. It never fails. Love is an antecedent. It's in contrast to anger. And we know that. We utilize that in our relationship with each other. We say, well, you don't love me because, you're angry with me. But actually what we see then is that there's just unmet ways of bitterness that reside. And what I mean by that is we got to rethink bitterness. Jesus warned about it, and not just bitterness as an entity of what somebody did to make me bitter, but me as a human being, as a follower of Christ, not to be overtaken. You know, that's the way of the world, live in bitterness, but not to be overtaken by him. It's worse than the beginning. Do you see what he's saying here? When it comes to sin, and the sin of bitterness included, is that we are drawn in by that desire, and when that desire becomes real, then we are brought into bondage. Hey, my overhead light came on. So good. All right, so by him who is overcome, the same is brought into bondage. And emotions affect our physical posture, our demeanor, and our actions. A lot of angry people lately. Our country, our world, struggling with anger. Emotions affect how we behave, how we act. If I am preaching this sermon, everybody's talked about, heard that sermon out of anger. If somebody's preaching out of anger, then it fails. We're to speak the truth in love. Cain, at the very beginning, when we see the beginning of it entering into human relationships, Cain was angry, and his countenance failed. Interesting. The definition for anger is nostril countenance. You look at a bull with his nostrils flaring out. The long-term effect. So here's the part that we're going to, I guess, not to belabor it, I guess you can run through it with your phone, but mark it at this place. Because I want to talk about the long-term effect of the aggression of others, because here's what does happen, what can happen, what's happened to a lot of us. The aggression of others. People don't care that you're hurt or upset or broke or wish things were different or whatever that is. So we begin to ask ourselves, do I hold critical thoughts? See, this is Dennis checking himself. Do I hold critical thoughts, even those beyond my ability to control? Do I hold critical thoughts? Do I envision retaliation and vengeance? 1. 2. In anger, I can shut down and communicate any communication. I can withdraw, and any behavior that I engage in feels justified. 2. When I discuss things that are controversial, I don't really want to hear about what you got to say. I don't want to hear your opposite view. That's number 3. Number 4. I hold deeply in my memories what other people have done wrong to me. Number 5. I rarely share my feelings and frustrations with others. The long-term effect. Frustrations often make me want to withdraw and quit. We lost the ability to continue. And now, our depression, which now doesn't look like anger, but it has at its root bitterness. I used to not start with this particular lesson when we talked about dealing with depression from a biblical perspective. But I do now, because for us to move forward, for me to capture your attention in this subject, we got to get this on the front of the table, on the top of the table, on top of the page. At least 50% of emotional, psychosomatic, interpersonal problems, familial and marital problems are a result of poorly handled anger. That's what Dwight Carlton in Overcoming Hurts and Anger. And that can be rooted, not just in what was said today, yesterday, last night, last month, but 20 years ago. Anxiety and panic do result from repressed anger. That's what David D. Burns, MD, says. So all of these things help us see how I must control my spirit, because we are now talking about the relationships that I have with myself. That is how I think, how I look at life. And when I say that, then I say how my view of God. Where is He? And what kind of relationship? Because if we get toward the end of this, we're going to turn the page to mercy. And that is when you and I, friend, will discover a release that is unlike anything that you can experience if you are one who has been burdened by the sin, the weight of bitterness. And it will allow you maybe to even lift up yourself enough that you can deal with the things that maybe were your part, the things that are beyond your control, and then the things that others are controlling that are interfering with your function of life. Know this, it's not sinful to be angry. In fact, 375 of the 455 times that God's wrath is referred to in a positive sense. So anger is not wrong, the emotion in and of itself. But you have to pull it back because it's actually a neutral, God-given emotion. We all have it. But as it interacts, that natural part of human relationships, it's not sinful, it's an emotion, and we have to manage it or control it. In Ephesians chapter 4:26, I'm going to put this as your peg for the day. Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath. It's daylight savings time in central Arkansas. For those of you that are angry or having that interpersonal problem, you have about 45 minutes or so before you have to stop being angry. Isn't it beautiful how God just says, hey, it's not sinful to be angry, but just don't take it too far. And now He's saying, hey, check your time, table it. Hey, as you well know, tomorrow sufficient will be the day for its own trouble, the Lord has said. And if anger and bitterness are there, your knowledge of this and God's mercy will be there. Have a blessed day. We'll talk to you Thursday.